Welcome to our Mobilizing Leadership production of Living Leadership. This series works from the premise that leadership is not a title, but a mindset. Filmed in one take, it explores how people navigate beyond the status quo and captures their insights on what leadership looks like across their work, life, and community. The Discovery Whiteboard session is facilitated by Stuart Morse, and we welcome our guest. So welcome to another session of Living Leadership, and I'm here with George Trussler today. So George, tell us a little bit about your position and where you work.
Okay, I'm the operations manager at Security Equipment Supply based out of Earth City, Missouri. We're a low voltage wholesale distributor.
Very good. So, when we think about leadership and the concept of not just leadership as a position, but as more of a mindset and how it shows up. What are your thoughts on how leadership and the concept of leading and it shows up in your life and work?
I just think that to lead other people, you have to help them become leaders. I think you have to help them understand what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish.
So this idea of others becoming leaders. So you said to help them. So in this concept of helping them become leaders, you'd said to, did I hear you correctly on what you're trying to do and trying to accomplish?
Right. What we're trying to do, make sure you've got clear communications into what you're trying to accomplish, and I think that the why is very important.
Okay. The why. So tell me a little what around that aspect of the why. Why is it so important?
Well, I think over the years, I've been exposed to different leaders.
Right.
And the ones who explain themselves, why they're doing what they're doing, and are shoulder to shoulder with you are the ones that are successful. And so I've kind of adopted that. I want to see other people be successful. That's kind of my button.
Right.
I like seeing people grow. And I always have.
And what are some when you talk about that this this others growing, what are some of the dimensions of that you've seen in people when you do? So let's say you do this, the idea of framed up the why, I've communicated it, this idea, and when you start to see them grow, how does that show up?
I think their growth, you can see it when they start to come back and question you and say, well, what about this and what about this? And I think that's where a lot of good ideas develop. You start out doing something one way, start out George's way, but George doesn't do the work every day. George isn't the one who performs the task. And then when they start doing it, then all of a sudden, if they're comfortable with you as a leader, they know they can come to you and say, hey, this isn't working. What about this? And what about this? And I think that's personal growth for them and for me.
Right. Well, okay, so you said a lot in there. So this idea, if I capture what you said, if you frame up the why and what you're trying to accomplish, and then let them, if you do it right, and I think it's also this idea that you said that if they're comfortable with you. So, okay, if I stand up the why, I guess I also need to add this element of comfort.
I think that comes first.
That comes first?
I think that comes first.
The comfort comes first?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And how does that happen?
I think it's just, you have to get to know people on a personal basis, know who they are, know what motivates them, and that takes time to learn.
Okay. Who they are and what motivates them.
And that comes through conversations.
Right. And is there a certain and as you say, this all comes from, as you say, your mechanism is to make this happen is conversations?
Mm-hmm. Asking questions.
What types of when you think about that, asking questions, and how do you start to frame those conversations so you can get to these things that what motivates
I think it depends
them?
on the person. I think every person is different. They're all individuals, and if you find somebody who is very family oriented, okay, when you sit down and talk to them, first thing how's the family?
Right.
How's everybody doing? How are the kids?
So when you go into that conversation, do you have a kind of mindset where you put yourself to enter into that?
Maybe not anymore, but maybe at first I did, trying
Okay.
to just get to know them and trying to find out who they are.
Okay.
Okay.
So really this setting yourself up that, hey, that makes sure I'm here, would it be fair to say that you're kind of walking and making sure you're curious about them?
Yes, I think curiosity is
Okay.
plays a big role in it.
So you've got to come in. Oh boy, here comes the spelling.
That's okay.
Did I get that right? Do I need to
It's close
it's
enough.
close enough.
It's
It's a
close enough.
whiteboard. That's right. So this idea of coming into this with curiosity, and that allows you to, and I imagine it's got this level of being also genuine and.
Oh, I think you absolutely have to care about the people around you, and I do. And I think it shows through just not only in conversation, but I think your actions. And the actions, and if you're a leader of the company, the actions of the company also speak.
Right, because I
to
guess the
that.
flip side is you could come in and start having these conversations, but if there's some residual thing that they've experienced through an action,
Right.
would you, I mean, do you encounter that sometimes where all of a sudden, so let's say this is conversations with actions, right? And the actions you do and the actions the company does. Have you come into a conversation where all of a sudden maybe that wasn't quite aligned, the actions that they had experienced, something that you might have to unpack that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I think that does happen. They don't, not knowing the why, going right back up to where the why is. Sometimes we have to do things a certain way, whether it be for compliance or something like that, and they're sitting going like, well, why do we have to do this?
Right.
Well, because it's something that's required, and then explaining that to them, explaining to them why it's important, then all of a sudden the light bulb will go on, and then it'll say, oh, okay.
Okay, and now there's that would lay some of that comfort.
Right, and then they
foundational
become
pieces.
more at ease with what we had to do.
Because this is a hard thing to get to. I mean, I would imagine that
time.
with all this, but this is the thing you're trying to get to, for them to all of a sudden start asking questions back to you.
Right, and
Okay.
not getting upset or angry if they're, I've got this grand idea, and all of a sudden 2 of my direct reports are coming saying, this doesn't work for me. Well, why not? Instead of going, well, you need to make it work. You can, it depends on your reaction. I think your reaction has a lot to do with their comfort level.
So, when you said that, it's interesting. You said, why not? Is there this balance between? I'm just going to say, see what you think about this, but the idea that you're trying to aligning whys, so you could come in and say, hey, George has got this idea, and I'll tell you why I want to do it. And they're like, well, that doesn't quite align with, I don't quite understand that why, and so you may have to flip that why to
then
them.
it's a conversation. Then it's
Right.
a conversation.
Why wouldn't it work? Or
Right.
Why?
And you ask those kinds of ask the leading question. Okay?
So you could frame this up, but then would it be fair to say you kind of have to understand this understanding around that, and people what are they seeing around that?
Right. You have to kind of put yourself in their shoes. Listen, and you have to listen. That's another thing. I think that a lot of companies and leaders fail to listen to what their people are saying. And that's the unique thing about our company is I think that everybody listens. That's part of our culture, is listening to the other people and hearing what they say.
And I guess it also, so where could we add listening to this? So I guess it's this curiosity, caring, and then conversations. Well, I'm just going to add it in here as it seems like a main tenet. So it's, and I wonder, so well, and if you have that as a tenet, so I'm going to go into conversations, I'm trying to build comfort level, I'm going to go in with this curiosity and caring, but I need to make sure that we're always listening.
Right, that is correct. You have
Because
to
when I get into that, I don't know, even though I'm trying to, hey, I want to tell you about this why and stuff, if I'm listening, I can pick up on that maybe something else they may have experienced in action.
They may say something totally unrelated to the conversation, something about a shipping policy. I may be talking to somebody in AP, and they say, well, we had a lot of red label charges. Well, why is that? You know, then you ask those whys back to them. Or I could say, well, that might be because of this, this, and this.
So let's say you get into this why discussion. How do you, and bringing back to this others, but you know, others, you were talking about helping others and becoming leaders and letting them to grow. So how do you start to ground them? You know, because I can imagine some people are all this why discussion and.
Well, you got to be careful not to ask the question. Don't say, well, why this, not why, but maybe how would you solve this?
Okay.
What would your solution be? So it's not necessarily using the word why, but.
So you're trying to find, would it be fair to say you're trying to find some type of ownership around this?
Right, exactly.
Thing?
So if they're questioning something, have them take ownership of it and say, well, how would you solve it?
Well, this is starting to sound a lot like a model that we use that, you know, that you obviously know this idea of socket, right? This, hey,
right.
Or what are we seeing?
Right. Learning that put actions into a word, right?
Right. And then, but you were already going to the why is, hey, are we seeing it? Hey, I'm seeing it this way. What are you seeing it? And then trying to understand that ownership of it.
Right.
Before we can actually go create what we think we can create together. Okay. When you think about this, and so we say, hey, the first thing I need to do is to establish comfort, and I've got curiosity, caring in these conversations, being aware that there's actions that maybe they have engaged with. I'm going to go in with listening. Is this so once you establish that, which is, I guess a lot of this is driving this conversation. Is there a number two, or does it, I mean, when you're first if I put a number one there for comfort, what would be, once you establish that comfort, what's the kind of the number two piece? Is it this ownership?
I think it would be. I think it would be ownership.
Okay. What else would you kind of, when you think about this, would you put around this? Is there, just in your thoughts of this, of where we've been taking this conversation?
Playing back their accomplishments. Once they start, I think you have to play those back and encourage. Once they may not be totally successful, but play back the success. And then you can take and go back, and what wasn't successful, play that back to them again, and then see if you can create another success.
So is this, when do you move with that? I mean, is there a certain point? Is it linked to your listening?
I think it depends on the person and the circumstances and the conversation. I think it's just taking a shot. Okay,
right.
Hey, you know, you did this really, really well. This went great, but this didn't go so well. What can we do to keep this intact? And this loose end, how do we get this loose end wrapped up?
So when you're talking about your interest in growing others, what has that done for you personally?
Oh, I think it's helped me grow, and I think it's helped me. I don't want to say relax, but I feel good about what I do.
Right.
I think by watching other people grow, I feel good about what I do every day. And when you feel good about what you do every day, it sure makes life a whole lot easier.
So what is it? So this idea of leadership and how you frame this up, and it's making you feel good. What is it? What has it done around your view of your role? I mean, how has that kind of evolved over your career?
It's interesting because I treat this like it's my company, like I own the company, and I want everybody to feel like they own a piece of it. I think they should. You have to own it.
So it's really coming back to this.
Yes.
This piece up here.
And we've always, like with our branches, we have always told the branch managers, treat this like your own business. Because you're going to get better decisions that way. If they're treating it like their own, like it's theirs, and I think that we've proven as a company we take care of our people. They're happy in what they do most of the time. You can't have 100% there. Nobody,
Right.
no company's going to have 100%. But I think overall, our culture is one that they see over time that yes, we're taking care of each other.
So what is over your career what is where this kind of was? Is there a time where, and maybe it happens often, where this kind of, you felt like this was kind of constrained or it got difficult and
Well, I think it gets difficult depending on, I mean, you talk about COVID. That created a whole different way of communicating. I mean, we weren't face-to-face anymore. I've always been a face-to-face communicator.
Right.
And so that was pretty difficult going to Zoom
and trying to do these things,
but you can still do it. That's where the video came in. I think that's important.
Right.
I usually will, if I'm on a call with somebody and they don't have their video on, where's your video? Because, I mean, sometimes facial expressions, you just read people. And I enjoy that. Just
Right.
trying to read the facial expressions. And you can say something and you can tell by a facial expression, oh, that's a hot button for them. And then maybe not right away, you can go back and dig into that a little bit.
Right. So I guess this idea of playback comes in different,
Right.
maybe in different forms. I
Yes.
can just successes, but as you're going through this,
Well,
you're
and
kind of
you can
cataloging.
play back failures too. There's nothing wrong with playing back a
Right.
failure to somebody and saying, you know, we weren't successful here. What did we do wrong? It's kind of like going back through discovery again.
Right. So linking that back to actions, you know, this idea that you had said that the company or even you have to be aware of your actions in this, and how does that play back into, you know, failures and being kind of open, that like what you just said, hey, maybe we didn't do it well.
I think
that
a
time,
leader
and
has
kind of
to
owning that.
I think a leader has to be vulnerable. I do believe that. And if I make a mistake, you have to say I've made the mistake.
Right. And what does that do? What have you found that being vulnerable and saying, hey, I made a mistake, what does that allow in the moment? What has that
I'll help you.
allowed? Okay.
I'll help you.
There you go.
No,
Gives
really.
comfort.
It's comfort to them. You're not.
So you were
placing-
just waiting to put the master
I wanted
arrow
to
on
use
the
my
drawing.
marker. I wanted to use my marker. No, I think that you're human too. We all make mistakes. We're learning as we go. We learn this thing of life as we go, and that's part of that. Them
So being
knowing,
that creates comfort.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you're no better than they are. You're going to make mistakes too. And by admitting those mistakes or saying, I don't know, but I'll get you an answer. That's always been, I was never a technical guru when I was in sales in the industry and all of that, but I don't know the answer, but let me get you the answer.
Right.
And that makes you important to your
Right.
customers and to your employees and everybody else. I don't know the answer, but
Very good. Well, I think you put a cap on it right there. That's a great piece that a lot of people can learn a lot from. George,
Okay.
thank you very much.
oh, you're
Is there
welcome.
anything else that you'd like to add to this?
No, I think that that's pretty much summed it up.
Very good. George, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our guest and the Sprint Ahead Mobilizing Leadership people who are collectively working to create leadership for all through shared purpose, connected communities, new opportunities to learn, and action-based leadership experiences. We look forward to hearing your insights. Please connect and move forward with us.